Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. Welcome back to another installment of Biology in the Basement with your host, Mr. Andraco. And we've increased our staff by 100%, right? We've got another guy here on staff. This is Mr. Bonesy. He is my boom mic guy, so thank you very much for lending an arm. Maybe we'll pay you enough money to get some meat on those bones. Anyways, the purpose of this video is to recap homeostasis, our new magic word as it's related to the human body, and talk a little bit about the digestive system, but the main focus of this is the respiratory system. But we've got to have a fact of the day so that we can get started, and here we go. In 2008 in the Olympics, unfortunately there will be no Summer Olympics this year, but in the 2008 Olympics, Usain Bolt actually broke a record and won gold in the 100-meter dash with one shoe untied. And also the funny thing is he broke his own record. So that's pretty impressive. Quite the improvement. All right, so let's go through the first part quickly, and then we'll get to the new stuff, which isn't very much, just the respiratory system. Okay, so what is the purpose of body systems, right? To maintain homeostasis, keep cells happy despite what's going on in the external environment, right? You want to experience your body going through homeostasis. Walk outside, right? Your eyes are like, it's so bright, right? Your retinas are getting too much light and it's not comfortable. So of course your irises are closing to allow less light in to keep those cells happy, right? You still want to be able to see, right? That's too much light on your retina, and so your irises are closing to adjust for this nice sunny day that we're having today. So that's just one example of your body maintaining homeostasis, and me also hinting for you to go outside and check out that sun. It's really nice. Okay, so we went through some of those examples. We'll hit the big one with the pancreas and the liver later. We are going system by system. First system of focus is the digestive system. This carries us back to the diffusion state lab, right? We got to break down big molecules into smaller ones so they can fit into the cell membrane. So that's the whole purpose, okay? We have our alimentary canal on the right side, mouth, teeth, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, our intestines, small and large, our rectum, and the anus, where the food leaves the body. Now, this is the GI tract, or alimentary canal, where the food goes through. But we also have other organs that help in the digestion and absorption, which we call accessory structures. I like to use this diagram just to show that you have your pharynx, which is the one spot that makes sure that the food goes in the right spot and doesn't go down your trachea, causing you, of course, to choke. There is your epiglottis covering over that spot, but your trachea is in the front, your food goes down the back. Also, your digestive system takes up a lot of space here. Sorry, guys. But then you say, well, what is in here? Well, that's like a whole open cavity. Well, we're going to talk about that today. Okay, so we've talked about all the parts. You've got that. I'll share this with you in case you can't read any of these terms the last time we went over them. The other section of this, of course, is why do we consume food, right? As heterotrophs, we are consumers, so we take in food for energy and nutrients. Where is energy stored? In chemical bonds, right? I hope you are saying that at home. And so that's one thing that we need the energy that is stored in chemical bonds, as well as our nutrients, the building blocks for cells, as well as parts of cells and other chemicals that we need for the functioning of our cells. Water, of course, is the number one nutrient of our body, making up most of it. But as we've talked earlier in the year, we will review, don't worry. We have carbohydrates, fats, and proteins as the big three nutrients that our body needs. Of course, we make nucleic acids with our vitamins, minerals, and other macronutrients. These are what are called micronutrients. They are nutrients, necessary items, but only needed in small quantities. Excuse me. So, on to the respiratory system. This is what's taking up that upper half of your torso, your chest cavity, are your lungs. And this is important to know that that's all that's up there. But before we get there, we have to talk about a few other things. Your air needs to be what's called conditioned before it gets into your lungs, right? This air out here, first of all, is not all oxygen. It's mostly nitrogen, right? But it's also got CO2 as well as other particles, viruses, other dust, bacteria. There's all kinds of stuff in the air. And sometimes it might not be the right temperature. It might be too warm. It might be too cool. And so, normally, when we breathe, notice nasal passage is still clear through all of this. When we breathe, right, we are taking in the air through our nasal passages. It is moistening it, which helps the absorption of oxygen. Also, it's either going to cool it or warm it, as we saw with our Neanderthals. They had much broader noses because they lived in colder climates, and so they had to have more surface area to warm up the air before it entered their lungs. But either way, we want to condition it. Also, we have hairs in our nose, cilia back here, all the way trying to filter out all of that air, garbage, right? That's why we, every once in a while, you know, because there's just dust in the air. So anybody who's swept a barn knows what I'm talking about. So this is the pharynx, right? This is the overlap of the digestive and respiratory systems, where it regulates food and air. We want the air to go down the trachea. Your trachea is a very interesting structure, this windpipe. It is kind of like the hose on your vacuum, right? Where the hose on your vacuum has those rings in them, making it a little bit more difficult to crush and actually stop the air from flowing through. Well, we copied that from our tracheal design. The way that ours set up is that we have rings of cartilage. That was what was in that picture that you saw when you looked at the trachea, were those rings of cartilage. And so then right below your trachea is your larynx, or your voice box. Usually at this time I show you this crazy video where they go right into the guy's mouth and he's like terribly singing. Oh! And they show his vocal cords and everything, but you can be happy you'll be missing that one. Anyways, right, we have two lungs, so we've got bronchi breaking up into a whole bunch of branches called bronchioles, and then we get to the alveoli. That is where the actual action between the air and the blood takes place. That's the most important exchange that we are focusing on. So here is your closed system, as I like to say with it. We have a closed system. The trachea is in the front, right? The rings of cartilage keeping this able to breathe even though I'm pressing right on it. And then it goes down into your voice box, and you can see where it breaks off into either lung. And at the bottom, you have what is called your diaphragm. Usually this is where I get real silly and I start doing things about like, does anybody ever think about how they breathe? You know, if you thought about how you breathe, it's probably kind of weird, right? Is it in your throat? Or are you like, right? Is it like in your lungs? Do your lungs have muscles on them? Are they like, you know? And it's just no, right? The answer is down here in your diaphragm, right? This diaphragm is a muscle. It's a big drum that controls the pressure inside of this airtight container. Okay, now luckily I have one for an example here. This pair of balloons inside here could be each of your lungs, and if there was enough room, your lungs would do the same thing. They would swing along because they are not muscular in any way. Then they're not part of the movement of the air. They just are the sacs that hold the alveoli inside. Okay, now if you can imagine that this is your trachea, either going out of your nasal passages or out of your mouth, right? This down here, this is your diaphragm down here. And now simply all you do when you breathe in is your diaphragm moves downward. And as you can hopefully see without too much glare, the lungs are inflating. And then when you exhale, you push your diaphragm up and the lungs deflate, right? Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out, okay? And so this is how your diaphragm works. Okay. Last thing is we should talk about respiration, right? We have many terms now for that, right? First of all, we know about cellular respiration. That was our big term, the release of energy from food, right? Then we learned about normal respiration here, where we're exchanging oxygen and CO2, which of course is different from just plain old breathing. Breathing, right, is just inhaling and exhaling, moving air in, moving air out, right? This is not the actual exchange. Now, this is where this part gets very important, and I'll go over this a couple times every time we do a video of this stuff. I'll have you guys do a batch of objectives after we finish these two body systems. But this is the important part. Okay? Actually, let's look at it from the big picture. The big picture is we need to get the oxygen that is in the air around us inside to our blood so that the blood can deliver it to all the cells of our body, right? So that's a two-part process, if you caught that, right? Air has oxygen. We need to get oxygen to blood, right? There's exchange number one. Then we need to get blood to deliver oxygen to cells. Okay, so there's two steps. Step one is what was called external respiration, right? Where we are exchanging between the external air, that's how I remember it, and our blood. So at the alveoli, right, we are taking in air and the oxygen is diffusing into our blood. That's exchange one. Then blood goes to the heart. Heart pumps freshly oxygenated blood to the cells. And then step two takes place, where we give oxygen to the cells from the blood. And also at the same time, right, they're giving it back, just like when you exhale, CO2 out, O2 in, CO2 out. And so this is our two-step process, and we'll go over that a couple times, okay, before we get to the circulatory system. So I'm sure that's plenty for now. We will continue on right? Hopefully your homework, you have done H147 through 152. And so the respiratory system is 153 to 156. H153 to 156 will be your homework. Okay, 153 to 156. That will keep you on target for now. And then we'll jump a page or two to get to blood, and then we'll come back to this scary review page when we're ready. But for now, work on 153 to 156, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Okay? And Draco signing out from Biology in the Basement. Stay safe, everybody.